Welcome everybody. We started a little early, so we'll let some guests arrive, but welcome to Inglenook. Again, welcome to Inglenook. This is our chef demonstration of grilling with Alex Levick. My name is Mike Savage. We'll be going over that in just a minute. We'll let some more people join in. We started a little early, but want to make sure you're in the right place. As you see Alex working hard at the grill down right by the chateau. We'll get started in just a minute or two. As you can see, our chef working hard on the grill out there. Seems you can make a grill everywhere, and he'll be discussing that in just a couple minutes. If you guys have any comments and feedback, please let us know. If you have any questions, there is a Q&A that if you want to answer a question, we can answer those too. If you want to feel free to use the chat, that'll work as well, but sometimes the questions are a little bit easier to answer in the Q&A. If you haven't been part of the webinar, it's just a different icon on the bottom. As you kind of move your icon, your screen, you'll be able to see the questions and answers as well as the chat. How's it going out there, Alex?
Oh, great. So far, so good.
Got a handful of attendees already here watching you work, so.
Great.
I'm hoping they all had a good lunch in them because this could be a little bit of torture watching how great the food looks. They have to figure it out themselves later. All right, welcome everybody. As I said just a couple minutes ago, my name is Mike Savage. I'm the tasting manager here at Inglenook. I have the great opportunity to experience these wines and work the great team, which I'm going to introduce in just a couple moments, our chef Alex Levick, to go through what he's grilling. Great opportunities to learn from Alex, and he's such a great communicator of those things and really working inventively with his preparation. Really has a great philosophy, which I'll let him go into that in just a minute. We're also going to be tasting our GMT20200902 2013 vintage. I get the thankful gift of that opportunity to try it, go through those wines. You guys have a great little discount if you haven't taken advantage of already. Hopefully you'll see how great this works with the preparation that Alex is making, and then you can go online and purchase it. Again, we'll get into that in just a couple minutes as well. Alex, do you want to explain what you're doing over there?
Yeah, absolutely. Welcome, everybody. So today we're going to be, my name's Alex, for those of you I haven't met. I'm the estate chef here at Inglenook Winery, and today we're cooking over open fire. So I wanted to convey a couple of things to you today about the overall concept of cooking with open fire, hopefully give you some ideas of something that you might be able to replicate at home. And then also talk about what we're cooking, the flavors of what we're cooking with, and then ultimately how that's going to go with our Panino Zinfandel. So briefly, what we have going on here is I'm trying to utilize the fire for a bunch of different things. So I wanted to point out that always keeping fire safety in mind, of course, it's really pretty straightforward to set up your own open fire cooking situation pretty much wherever you are. Again, keeping fire safety in top priority. You really only need a few things. Cinder blocks come in really handy for building up any kind of fire, open fire cooking vessel. Here I have a 3/8 inch plank of carbon steel. Something like this, you can talk to your local metal shop, your local welder, and that's something they can actually cut for you. I use these not only for like a plancha for cooking like on a flat top like this, I also use them for baking in my ovens for baking bread. And then lastly, I have this kind of crazy contraption that has our little friend hanging off of it here. Basically, this is kind of based on the Argentinian style of grilling outside, which really simply they will take a whole animal like a lamb or a pig, and they'll use rebar where they put one piece of rebar going up the middle, another one splayed across the arms, another one splayed across the feet to kind of stretch it out. And then you can just take that and actually pound it into the ground and build a fire right in front of it and slowly cook it. So in this case, since we're at a winery, I kind of had the idea of using a barrel as a counterweight. So it's filled with water. I have this total overkill crank on here so that I can actually adjust it, bring it closer or further away from the fire. And at other times, I've had a whole animal splayed up on here like I described. Other times I've hung a whole, for example, a whole short rib, basically. We also had, at one of the harvest parties, we had a steamship cut of beef, which is kind of like, almost like a whole cow's leg hanging off of here. So anyway, it's very versatile. You can really rig this up however you like. You can hang several chickens off of here. On this rebar, you can actually kind of skewer the chickens directly onto the rebar. Really, however you want to do it, it kind of leaves the options open for creativity and for creating something that you can cook a lot of food with at once. So there are important things to keep in mind when cooking this way. Besides safety, which I'll mention 100 more times today, we're using indirect heat here. So we have two goals, really. One is to really slowly cook our protein so that we're not drying it out so it stays juicy. And by slow cooking it, we're cooking at a lower temperature so that it ends up being very tender as well. So we're trying not to cook the juices out so it stays moist. We're also trying to cook it slowly so that it stays tender. So in this case, we have the chicken. I kind of give myself about 3 hours to cook this one chicken. Like I said before, you can rig it up so that you have several hanging off it, so you're doing more than one thing at once. But the idea is to cook it slowly. One of the ways in which you can really gauge the way it's cooking is if you notice the drips coming off of the animal here, which are, the juice is kind of cooking out of it. I can tell right now that my fire is just a little too hot by how quickly and how often those drips are coming out. You want those to be a little bit slower. I stoked the fire right before we started filming, so I got a little bit hot. But generally speaking, if you have a piece of meat hanging on there, watch for those drips. You want basically like one drip about every 10 seconds. It's very slow. And the way we achieve that is by having indirect heat. So if you could see here the way we have the fire, it is kind of in a circle around our chicken. So, I can put my hand here and it's not too hot. You want the fire to be, the heat source to be at least a couple of feet away so that you're slowly kind of nursing this thing along. At the same time, we're using smoke for flavor here. So to achieve good flavor with smoke, you want to make sure your fire is hot. If your fire is not hot, the quality of smoke isn't going to be as good. There's a difference between food tasting like a campfire and something that tastes sort of richly barbecued. And the way you get that really rich, delicious flavor is by making sure that you have hot coals down there. So I'll start the fire several hours in advance, make sure that burns down. And then, and using hardwood, by the way, so we're using oak today. You want to make sure it's something dense so that it burns hot. So something like oak is good. Wood from fruit trees is good. It's also dense like cherry trees. It's also good for smoking in those applications. Some nut trees, like all from almonds, wood from those trees are good as well. In our case, we have barrel staves since we're a winery. These are oak. They still have some flavor imparted from having been used for aging wine. So that does become a little bit of a factor, but really we're looking at the kind of the phenolic compounds, all the different flavor compounds that are going to be a result of burning a really dense wood. So something like pine would work very well. Not only does it burn quickly, but it doesn't burn as hot, and the smoke off of it just isn't going to taste as good. So you want to make sure the wood you use for imparting smoke flavor is dense, and you want to make sure it's dry also. You don't really want wet wood because then it has to steam first before it can burn. Again, we're talking about higher temperatures in order to get a smoke that actually is going to taste good versus something sooty or something that's going to make your food taste like it was hot on fire or something like that. So to kind of recap, when we're setting up something to cook with outside, we're going to set up, we're going to light the fire well in advance so there's time for the wood to burn down. Then once we have hot coals, then we're going to gently feed it so that it's never raging. And then at intervals, we're going to place wood on there that we're going to use to impart smoky flavors. So in our situation, we started with oak. Once that burned down, I would feed it with a piece of oak here and there. And then I'm using, also happens to be oak, but I'm using barrel staves as my source of smoke. So that's going to be what's imparting flavor. Now, as far as what's going on here, food-wise and flavor-wise, the really brilliant thing about cooking this way is that you don't need a bunch of flavors as far as spices and things like that go. We're mostly using smoke and salt as the flavoring. So this chicken, the way I prepare this before putting over this open fire is the day before, I'll generously season it with salt all over as well as inside the cavity. And then I'll put it on the roaster rack and put it in the fridge overnight. The salt's gonna allow some of the moisture to escape from the chicken, which potentially can lead to kind of crispier skin in certain applications. But it's also going to start permeating the flesh. So some people talk about brining meat, brining chickens in a liquid. You can also, there is also this concept of dry brining. So you can also season something heavily with salt and whatever spices you like, leave it overnight. In most situations, that salt should be measured so that you know exactly what you're getting yourself into salt-wise. In the case of a chicken, just season it liberally. That works. A pretty generous coating of salt on the outside, leave it alone overnight, and then when you go to cook it, especially in this way, just the salt and the smoke is going to produce something really kind of magical. So it's really just about slowly coaxing it up to temperature, just using salt and using smoke off of the wood that's coming off of a fire that's nice and hot. The other thing I've done here is on the inside, I put half a lemon, I put half a head of garlic that I cut in half horizontally to expose all the cloves. And then there are rosemary sprigs, thyme sprigs, and bay leaf. So the lemon is really keeping moisture inside there, and it's keeping it moist as it cooks. And the rest of it is just imparting flavor as it cooks. The other thing that I'm doing here that you may have noticed at the beginning is I have some olive oil with chopped herbs in it. So in here I chopped rosemary and chopped thyme. So every once in a while, and I got this super fancy basting brush here, which over here around the winery, there's rosemary growing everywhere. So it makes for a nice basting brush. This will just help continue imparting some moisture via the olive oil, as well as herb flavor. I also put some finely cracked pepper in here as well. If there are any other flavors you like, this is a good vehicle to kind of slowly dress the bird with, or slowly dress your protein with as it cooks. So those are, generally speaking, the flavors we're working with. Really pretty simple. We're just talking herbs with aromatics, in this case rosemary and thyme. And then on the inside I have those other aromatics I mentioned, including that half a lemon, which is going to help keep everything nice and moist. So with everything else
for you, Alex, real quick, sorry to interrupt. How much wood do you factor in? How much wood are you looking to prepare for? I know it depends on what you're cooking, but for the chicken, for example.
Yeah, for sure. It's probably 3 times more than you think. So most of the time when you do this, it's fun to get a group of people together, especially, I don't know, around here in our neighborhood during summertime, everybody has gardens, there are tons of vegetables. So whatever you can do to have people bring all kinds of different proteins, different vegetables, get people together, make it worth the while to really burn all the fuel, because it isn't exactly efficient as far as that goes, because we're working slowly. And so we're constantly feeding the fire. So I can't give you an exact number as far as, pounds of wood per hour or so. But just expect that it might take, several more bushels of wood than you might expect. As far as the wood for smoking goes, that kind of depends on the type of wood that it is, really. But as long as your wood for fuel to begin with is a hardwood, that on its own, the oak itself is going to really produce a smoke that is going to make the food taste good. So having a wood of your choice on top of that to smoke with is not absolutely necessary, but it's pretty nice to do. And most of the time, if you look around the stores where you live, you'll find something, whether it's almond wood or apple wood or cherry wood or something like that. So the other things I have, so what I did here also, I just wanted to mention, so I built up the flat top here. So this is a great way to cook just about anything. You could put shrimp on here, you could put fish on here, you can sear steaks on here. And the source of heat, I want to point out that we're working with coals for the most part down there. That's really what you want. So what I've done, the reason I've built this the way I have is that I'm feeding the fire in differing parts on either side, and then I'm allowing the coals to trickle down under here and then under my grill. So this way I'm giving myself several different ways to cook all at once. So it provides for all the more versatility to cook a bunch of different things at once. Again, if you're going to burn all the wood, you might as well be able to cook a bunch of stuff all at once. So I'm preparing a dish today to pair with the Zinfandel of this slow roasted chicken, which is going to be absolutely delicious, just with the salt, the way I described, and the herbs and the olive oil. The eggplant that I have grilling over here, that's going to have a little bit of char on it. I'll show you in a little bit, but we're gonna just put this in a bowl with some creme fraiche, and I'm just gonna mash it by hand with a whisk with some salt. And it's going to be kind of a rustic mashed eggplant with creme fraiche. So it'll be a little bit tangy from the creme fraiche. It'll be rich from the creme fraiche, nice and earthy from the eggplant. It'll be delicious. Over here, I'm slowly roasting and kind of smoking these tomatoes. So these we're gonna pull off the grill, put them in a bowl with some fresh tomatoes as well, toss them with some herbs and some olive oil, and that itself is gonna turn into this kind of saucy vinaigrette that's gonna go on top. I'll show you guys all of this later. But one of the beauties of cooking during the summertime is that take ingredients at their peak, and then you don't have to do much. Really, you're just thinking about, well, how is this going to go with the wine? So in the case of Pinino, in the case of Zinfandel, it's I like it for a lot of different reasons. One of which is that it's particularly food friendly. It's got such a big, vibrant flavor profile that you can throw a lot of food at it and still taste really all of the nuances that are in there, most if not all of the nuances. So for that reason, I'm kind of showing that just because it's a red wine, it doesn't have to be beef, for example, or just because it's red wine, it doesn't have to be super specific, particular kind of tropes that always go with red wines. In our case, we're taking what's seasonal. We're adding some fat to the eggplant in the way of creme fraiche, so that makes the mouthfeel kind of rich, which is helpful when you have a red wine that's dry and that has a tannic structure. The chicken itself is relatively lean, but again, that's going to be balanced out by some of the richness in the eggplant. And then the tomatoes, which are going to go on top, which are typically kind of a hard pairing with wine. Tomatoes typically have a good amount of sugar in them. They can also have a bunch of acid. It's a little bit tricky. So I just want to say that it's all within context. With Pinino, it works great. It's to me, it's kind of the Zinfandel is a great wine to put with Italian food. Of course, tomatoes being so common in Italian food, that all these flavors together are able to really work with it. So having said that, I'll pass it over to Mike to tell you a little more about the wine. We'll check back in here in a few minutes and I'll show you what I have going on as far as the finished plate. All right.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. Trying to get this switched over for us so that I'm here. So yes, I have the opportunity to talk about this beautiful wine, the Zinfandel, which Alex mentioned about the tomatoes and that Italian heritage. Really is a special story if you haven't heard it before about the Panino edition, the Edizione Panino Zinfandel, which was named after Francis's maternal grandfather, Francesco Panino, who had a title company, who was actually on the label here, sharing the story about his immigration from the port of Naples to Ellis Island in the United States with this beautiful story. One of my favorite parts about this wine really is it's not what you expect of a Zinfandel that's produced masked. A lot of people really rely on that large berry, high sugar, high concentration, and they can extract it and you get a really fruit-forward jammy Zin for most people's impression of Zin. And that's not what we have here. We have a little bit further back on the property. We don't get those high temperatures that we can that are outside of the Napa Valley, where a lot of Zinfandels are produced. And so you get a Zinfandel that really has characteristics that you're not really expecting. I'm going to switch to the slideshow and show off a little bit of the facts about the wine as soon as I can get that set up. And you can see right here some of the facts about the wine itself, all off the property here. Majority Zinfandel. We do use a little Primitivo. This particular vintage, the 2013, is a little bit unusual in the fact that it's one of the only vintages that we've had that we put Syrah in there. We have put a little bit of Cab in the past. There has been occasional Syrah, but at 3% Syrah really makes this one really unique for the Zinfandels that we produce from the property. What isn't unique about this wine is really how fantastic it ages. A lot of people with Zinfandels having that high sugar jamminess, well, that fruit fades first. And so you'll get Zinfandels that won't last 5 to 7 years. They'll be showing their age. Whereas our Zinfandels here have a really tremendous capacity to age. I was telling Alex a little story earlier about really one of my favorite food and wine pairings. No offense to Alex, because we worked together for a long time and he's produced phenomenal dinners. But one of my favorite things was a Zinfandel that was 10 years old with just a simple hamburger and Swiss that he produced. And it's not to say that anything you produce isn't exemplary. It was my impression of the wine. Didn't have that expectation, and I was blown away and how well it worked at the age it was with something as simple and as common as a hamburger, not what Alex is producing right now. For this 2013 Zinfandel, to talk about the year specifically, still has about 14.5 alcohol. It's one of the things we really can't avoid in California. We do our best to really let the fruit show and not over ripen the wine, get that high Brix level, which leads into alcohol, but at a certain point that development needs to happen, and so we do have a 14.5 on this one. Again, tasting notes is really interesting for us because I'm going to taste it with you guys in just a minute. But the tasting notes talking about how it's indulged with a velvety texture and soft tannins really has a great level of restraint. I think this vintage really shows that incredibly well. For us, it's amazing how it has that, I call it the taste of the holidays, but that clove, nutmeg, cocoa flavors that work with this throughout time is always one of my favorite things. But my favorite part about it is, as Alex mentioned, is it's not too hard to work with other food. It doesn't stay around too long. It's not too impressive. It works really well with everything, and that's that balance of the acidity. And so with this Zinfandel, as I'm trying now, we're realizing it's 7 years past. A lot of Zinfandels would be falling apart. When you smell this wine, you really get that warm cranberry cherry as if you were stewing them, reducing them down. I love about it is there's an herbaceousness to this wine. It's almost like crushed thyme, spicy. You get very light aromatics, but on this 13, you just get that smell of age. It's not overdone. You get that evidence that it is 7 years old. And when we taste this wine, one of my favorite parts, you just get such a beautiful mouthfeel. For me, you know, there's an element of cherry. I do get that cranberry acidity when I taste the wine. It does have the slightest dark licorice flavor to the back end, which is something I really appreciate about the wine, but it lingers. It's maintaining its flavor throughout the palate. It's still staying with us as we try the wine, and it doesn't go away. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It has that nice freshness and the acidity, but it retains the tannins. And for me, this wine's got more time. kind of hard to believe that we can age this 2013 longer. But for me, I'm still waiting to see if it pushes past that 10-year mark for us. A little bit more reserve on that, you know, I don't want to say leather, mostly because I'm trying to say what Syrah tastes like. But there is a little bit of a back end that is really welcome and inviting, that the eggplant that Alex is producing. It's going to be really incredible to get those earth notes together. But again, with this Zinfandel, such an incredible wine for us. One of our favorites here to enjoy, because you can buy this wine at such a great price. And the longer you hold on to it, the more value you retain with it. And you really get to enjoy those times, as Alex mentioned about having friends over and sharing it. The Zinfandel is really that wine. It's a great wine to share, because if people have bad impressions of Zinfandel, this can break them. And if they don't, it works extremely well with food, so it doesn't matter what they say about the wine, because the food will work well with this wine itself. With today, you guys are actually getting a discount. We'll go into a little bit of the end. It's $55 retail. But if you use a little coupon with us, if you're not a member with us, you'll get a 30% discount, which brings it right to about $38.50 for that. If you are a member with us or interested in membership, you actually get a 35% discount, which is an addition from the normal membership discounts that we have. So with that, I'm wanted to see with Alex what kind of tips he has to how to do great plate ups. Really, for me to kind of give a little backstory between Alex and I, we've been here for a pretty good long time together, worked in events with Alex, working with these dinners. And so I'm always amazed at really the creativity, but not to get in the way of what he's producing over technique, but producing great food with that technique and texture, which I'm going to cancel my spotlight and send it over to Alex.
All right, welcome back, everybody. So really quick, I really didn't do too much while you were away, but what I did do is I pulled the eggplant off the grill. Now that I'm standing over here, the smoke is coming this way, so pardon me if I'm squinting. But
they say smoke is beauty, Alex.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Then so the eggplant came off the grill. I put it in a bowl. I put a couple of spoons of creme fraiche, just by eye. It's kind of, you know, really up to you how saucy or how rich you want to make it. But if I had to guess, it was probably about a pound of eggplant starting, and then probably about a quarter to a half a cup of creme fraiche. A couple of pinches of salt, and I'm just mashing it with my whisk. This is all really kind of really straightforward, easy stuff. This is gonna really, like I said before, it's really, really tasty. Just the flavor that's imparted off of the wood, along with the creme fraiche and some salt. It's so simple, but it's so good. And then the other element here is I had those tomatoes roasting and smoking and grilling over there. I pulled those off the grill, put them in a bowl. I have a few fresh tomatoes that I just cut in half in here as well. You can see all those juices that just came off of the tomatoes just from them cooking. So this basically turns it to its own sauce, just like that, which is kind of my favorite, you know, way to prepare food is if you just treat it a certain way and then put it together, and it kind of makes its own magic. So just tomatoes in there so far. I'm going to add just a pinch or so of salt. I have chopped parsley and chopped chives. That's going to go in there as well. This all gets mixed together. And this becomes the sauce, as well as just the fresh herby element that goes on top that's going to contrast with the rich eggplant and the super tasty, kind of lightly smoky chicken. Okay, so we have our elements assembled here, basically. So we have our rich, delicious, creamy eggplant. We have this amazing kind of roasted and grilled tomato. Basically, it's almost a vinaigrette at this point, if we added some oil to it. We have basil leaves. These basil leaves I picked out of the garden. I have several varieties of basil. They're gonna, obviously tomatoes and basil go great together, right? So far we kind of have some really classic Italian flavor combinations here. Eggplant, tomato, basil, chicken. It's almost pushing towards like a chicken parmesan if we prepared it a different way, or an eggplant parmesan. So those are our elements. Now we're gonna go ahead and plate it up. So by the way, when you're cooking this chicken, I do use a thermometer to check it. If you're a total pro and you have some kind of x-ray vision, you can just look at it and know that it's ready. I'll still check it just to make sure. It can be deceiving, especially if you didn't quite rotate it correctly. I want to make sure that it's roasted one direction. I'll flip it halfway through. make sure it's properly roasted that way. You want to make sure that the heat penetrates all the way through so you don't get raw spots. So having said that, when you check it with your instant read thermometer, check it in a few different spots. I'll check it in the deepest part of the breast. I'll check it in the deepest part of the thigh. And usually between those 2 points, I can be pretty confident that it's cooked all the way through. Finish temperature on these, if you pull it off at 150 to 155, you just want it to carry over to past 158. I would pull it off right around there, 155 to be safe. When you cook it this slowly, even if you pull it off at the temperature at which it's done and then it carries over a little more, it's not as big of an issue because you've nursed it along so gently that all the juices and everything is still intact. So just so you know, you do have a little bit of leeway there. It's still going to be absolutely delicious even if it's cooked a little bit longer. So I'll just show you how I would plate this up, or how you can consider doing it at home. So the creamy eggplant is going to go on the bottom of the plate. And I have some chicken already prepared. That's going to go on top. So this goes down first. Next, we're going to place the pieces. So what I did is I carved the breast off the chicken and I cut it in half. In this case, I kept the wing there. This is the other part of the breast here. What you can do is you could stand some pieces up to make it more interesting. Whenever I plate food, I always just think about if you just looked at it, you know, first off, does it look kind of flat and boring, or does it have dimension and it looks interesting and it sort of grabs your attention? So whatever you can do, you know, play around with it, but you can do something that really, when it has a little more dimension and seems like it's rising out of the plate, it's almost always going to be more appealing and more interesting to look at. Okay, so we have our beautiful chicken with our fire grilled eggplant there. Then we have this beautiful tomato sauce that we're going to put right on top of these herbs. And this is, you know, this is like around here especially, it's kind of just going in the garden, taking what's ready and applying some knife cuts and a little bit of heat. That's what I love about summertime, is that especially around here, we're lucky to have all these beautiful things here that you don't really, it's almost like you don't have to think too much. You just kind of take what's ready. Okay. Then we have these really lovely basil leaves that are so good. So it's amazing how different certain varieties of basil are. Like one of these types of basils, it smells just like Concord grapes to me. It's crazy. It's really uniquely complex and interesting. So it's worth growing different varieties if you have a chance. And then lastly, I have too many summer squash in the garden, so we're going to use some of the blossoms. I like just using them raw like this. Obviously, they're great battered and fried, like so many of us enjoy eating them when we're afforded that luxury. But raw is amazing too. They're very delicate. It's not like they have a particularly strong flavor, but they're absolutely beautiful and have a really nice, gentle texture to them. So I tend to use them like this a lot for garnishes. Then lastly,
Alex, quick question for you. There's an Richard Kastner asked a question about grilling eggplant peeled. Do you peel your eggplant when you grill it, or do you leave the rind on?
You can do both. There's no issues with doing both. I peeled it in this case because I knew I was going to mash it with the whisk later. So if the skin was still on there and if it was really strong skin that was sort of thick, I probably wouldn't be able to mash it with my whisk. So for me, this was a practical decision. Mm-hmm. I personally like to leave as much of the vegetable intact as possible. So my first choice is always to leave the skin on, as long as the eggplant is properly ripe, so that it's not overripe or underripe, so that the skin is either bitter or too thick, so that you're left chewing on something for a long time. So if I have any doubt, I'll just try a little bit, even raw. I'll kind of chew on it and see what I think, if I have any doubts. So in this case, it was a practical decision. If you can keep it on, then I would. I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of...
The last part of this was, what about using a gas grill? And I thought you mentioned the smoke influence helps it versus how a gas grill would work.
No, absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up. That was, that's something, so your choice of fuel is going to 100% impact the flavor profile of what you end up with. So in order of flavor complexity that's imparted on your food from least to greatest, gas is going to be the least interesting as far as the way it's going to make your food, just simply because there aren't a lot of compounds being burned and turned into all kinds of different phenolic compounds. It's just gas burning. It doesn't produce flavors that are particularly complex. So the way your flavor really develops there is from anything that drips off of your protein or your vegetables and hits the fire, produces bursts of smoke. And that's kind of how you get these pops of flavor, rather than actually getting flavor from the smoke coming off of the fuel. So gas in that way is a little less interesting. If you're cooking with gas towards the end, you can add some wood chips or add a piece of dense wood in there, however it might work in your grill that you can do safely, and get some smoke on it that way. The next level as far as fuels go is charcoal. So if you use a really nice mesquite charcoal, for example, you'll get more flavor off of that than you will with gas. So if you can, using a nice hardwood charcoal is your next best bet. And then your best bet is using a really nice hard dense wood, which is obviously going to be usually going to be the most expensive, usually going to take the most time. It's going to be the least, really the least efficient as far as how much you need to burn to produce what it is you're cooking, which is why earlier I said cook as much as you can all at once. Nothing wrong with having leftovers to make it worth your while. But if you have it, it's really the best way to get great flavor. So just to finish up here, I sprinkled just some Maldon salt to finish, but whatever little coarse salt on there is really nice for a salty pop of flavor. Some of our estate olive oil is going right on top, again, for some another element of richness, as well as just the fact that our olive oil is delicious. So there is the finished dish. To me, it just completely encompasses the time of the season right now. Also works absolutely greatly with this wine. So it's always great the way these things just kind of come together. So that's pretty much it for me. If anybody has any questions or thoughts, feel free to bring them up now. If you think of anything at a later time, I encourage you to email me at alex.lovick, L-O-V-I-C-K, at inglenook.com. Don't be shy. I'm happy to talk about food. It's what I do for a living. So I'm completely happy to entertain any thoughts or questions that way as well. So anyway, thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you guys pick something up. I hope it's something that you can replicate at home, or at least maybe it'll influence something you do sometime soon.
And as Alex is showing off such great shots of the chateau, what's great about barbecuing is, as you're inviting people to a great environment, and as Alex said, and letting the environment, especially for where we are, these foods we have to offer showcase themselves. Very fortunate to be a part of this place for the wines that we share. And I'm sneaking over to our slideshow to talk about other things as well. As we mentioned, there is the opportunity for you to take this advantage at home. If you wanted to bring this 2013 Zinfandel home to you, as I mentioned, there is a discount. If you are not a member, there's a coupon code. If you go to our website, right at the end, there is a coupon code in your checkout. If you type in ING Chef Grill, should put it a 30% discount on the 750 format of the Edizione Panino 2013 vintage of our Zinfandel. If you're a member, it's going to automatically pop in for this instead of essentially 35% off, and it's going to run for, I want to say it's for about 2 weeks. We'll have this up until about the 14th of September for you to take advantage of. And again, at our website, it's on there, www.inglenook.com. Beautiful shot of our retail salon. If you guys want to join us, you can make reservation. We are open. We're hosting guests Thursday through Sunday from 10:30 for our first seated appointment time until 4 o'clock, so last appointment time. We do close at 5 o'clock. But if you wanted to visit us, you're welcome to join us. We have those restrictions to make reservations in advance. We can't take walk-ins. But if you call or use our website, we'll make those appointments for you to come in and visit. And you can walk into our beautiful retail salon and see what we have to offer. Again, if you want to join us in that setting, we've just opened up pergola tastings as well as pergola wine flights, as well as a little bit of food and wine pairing we have available. Those inquiries can be done at our website, but you can really enjoy the beautiful environment, making the best of this COVID situation. Thankfully, we have such great environment outside to really embrace this time of year in harvest and what's the activity we have as the season comes into harvest, where we're the busiest as we can. So I think that there's a couple more Q&A questions I'll answer really quick. Someone's asking about, can Zin be served slightly chilled? Really is up to you. I wouldn't put anything inside the wine to dilute it, so I wouldn't put ice cubes in it. But as we've been serving outside, we are making sure that we keep our wines in a sub-zero. We have these ceramic chillers that we keep cold, so we don't put it in an ice bath. We make sure that the bottle stays cool because we want to serve it a little bit longer, mostly in your environment. If you're outside and it's 95 plus degrees, we want to make sure that wine isn't serving and steaming at 98 plus degrees. We want to make sure that wine has the right temperature, but it is really part of the environment. With Napa Valley and grilling, it's a beautiful time right now. It's starting to cool down. We're not in that 90s we have. And if you're going to enjoy good company around a good fire and have these wines, you should be okay in the temperatures that we have to enjoy it. But it's really about how you would enjoy the wine. Red wines on extremely hot days, probably not the best idea flavor-wise, but if you do serve them chilled, you're probably going to have a great opportunity to enjoy it and make your own experience, not to let me tell you what to do. So. It seems like all the questions we have. Give you guys a couple more minutes. I want to say thank you guys for joining us. Really great opportunity with Alex to impart his knowledge and creativity on the wines that he has as he's now back on camera for us. Again, thank you for joining us. If you're a member with us, thank you for being a member with us. If you'd like to join our Heritage Society, it's not just a wine club. We really have great opportunities for you to be a part of the legacy of Inglenook and enjoy these wines. And if you're patient with these shipments, you can wait 7 years in your cellar and have these opportunities to enjoy them. Or if you're still a member, you can call us and dig into our cellar and enjoy something a little bit beyond the current vintages as our wines are made really to be part of all time, not just today. You're welcome to enjoy them when you would like to. So. Alex, do you have any parting words? I think there's a couple more Q&As that just flied in real quick. Do you have anything to say?
I did also want to mention that obviously we use chicken today. If I were to prepare a vegetarian dish, you can still use all the same components, just substitute. I personally would, I really like grilled beans during the summertime. So if you get Romano beans or any kind of wax beans, I love grilled Romano beans in particular. They're a little larger, they're kind of flat, they're slightly more conducive to being on the grill. But those tossed in olive oil with some salt and then grilled in the same application on top of the mashed eggplant with the tomato sauce would be absolutely delicious. So I just wanted to encourage anybody else who might not eat chicken or would like to try something else. The same setup, all these same components that I talked you through today could really work with a lot of different things, including just about any type of vegetable. So no, other than that, I just really appreciate everybody stopping by and hanging out with us.
All right, thank you guys. There's a couple questions I'll answer offline, but I think we'll close this down. And again, thank you guys for joining us. Great for the feedback. We love to hear that we're not just talking to ourselves through cameras, that everyone's out there and enjoying it. We did have this on Facebook, so if you want to rewatch anything, if you missed anything, it is on our Facebook page. You might be able to watch back and see it. So again, thank you guys, and we'll see you next time.